Whenever you're thinking about reading or buying a new book, you should always check it for this. And if that test comes positive, you may want to think twice before doing that. You want to know what it is? I'll tell you. It's that series disease. Hi, I'm Nick Hein, and on this channel I'm overloading my brain while trying to talk with crappy accent and very bad grammar about the good and bad books and everything reading and writing related. So, long ago, in a galaxy far, far away, when I was just taking my first steps as a book blogger, I wrote an article about a certain book series. I'm not going to tell you the name of the series, the title of the series, or the name of the author, because it's really irrelevant for the moment for us. But the article wasn't exactly a positive one, because I was fighting with reading the series. I don't really remember right now, was it 8 books or 10 books, maybe it's already expanded to even more, but I was really struggling and I quit somewhere in the middle of the 4th book. And I honestly expressed all my struggles, all my feelings in that article. I was telling that it's kinda really long, boring, the action is developing slowly, the characters are not really exciting, and they are just running in circles throughout all the books, etc, etc, etc. But the internet is cruel, and I got a pretty brutal backlash from the fans of that series, and the most popular argument in those pretty mean comments was like, come on man, how can you judge the whole series if you didn't read it through? And the people was saying that, yeah, maybe the first 4 or 5 books are a little bit slow developing, but in the 7th everything comes up together, everything is growing, and you will know what it was about. And I was like, I didn't get much into discussion with them, because you probably will agree with me, it was pretty much pointless thing to do. But inside my head I thought, what the hell? Is it really how it is supposed to work? Like, I want to read through like 7 books this thick just to get understanding of what's going on? Don't get me wrong, I don't have nothing against a really good series, like take for example the Frank Herbert's Dune or the Foundation by the great late Isaac Asimov. But sometimes, quite often actually, it feels more like trying to commercialize the product rather than give the good experience for the readers. And these days it's pretty common for even pretty much mediocre books, if they have at least some semblance of the commercial success, to pull with them several sequels, couple of prequels, probably TV series adaptation, the movie adaptation, the big fan zone, the expanding multiverse, etc, 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 etc. But even worse, sometimes authors already starting the first sentence while having this idea about writing the whole big giant book series consisting of 17 tomes. And for me it sounds like it's not really what is writing supposedly should be about. And I know that I'm representing a very small minority, because majority of the people, majority of the readers right now are pretty much rooting for the huge long good series, and I guess it's okay. But sometimes you start to think, what are we losing, what are we missing because of that? Let's take a really known, really popular example, the great George Martin and his great fantasy saga. And it's awesome. Well, actually I don't like it, but it's not about the many thrones, it's just that I'm not rooting much for the fantasy. That's just my thing. It's purely subjective. I'm not pressing that on anybody. But do you know that George Martin, before going to the dark side of the fantasy, was a very prolific and very successful and very talented science fiction writer? And yeah, I'm probably right now contradicting myself a little bit, bringing up some heat upon the fantasy. Well, in this case, I think I'm right, and as good as the fantasy saga by George Martin is, I still think he was much better as a science fiction writer, and the best books by George Martin were written back then, namely his novels Dying of the Light and Windhaven. My point is, when the author getting totally invested in some big series project, he can't really spare some time to writing something else. And while we can enjoy now this huge beautiful saga, well, those who enjoy it, of A Song of Ice and Fire, I'm keep thinking, on the other end, what did we lost? Like, for example, we didn't have all this possibly good, nice, really intricate and talented science fiction novels that George Martin could have written. And we also get George Martin totally burned out by this project and unable to finish it. I really don't believe he will ever do. Probably, maybe he will, I don't know, I would not be surprised if he will use ChatGPT or hire the ghostwriters to finish the projects. Yeah, I'm being pretty evil right now, but that's the only way he can possibly finish that, I think. I don't know. Hopefully I'm wrong. Of course, it's not that simple, and I have just took the most obvious example. Sometimes the authors don't took those series as their one and only life goal and working all over the place, while once in a while returning to the series, like it was, for example, with the Asimov's Foundation, which was, like, I believe something like 40 years written in the span of the 40 years. And I'm not really going into the free expansions, free sequels of that series. Some of them officially approved, some of them were not. I think it's a topic for another single video, for the separate video, and I will probably cover them at some point, because some of those sequels written by the really good science fiction authors are worth mentioning and worth reading, actually, but that's a different topic. The same goes for the Dune, for example, by the Frank Herbert, because simultaneously, while working on the Dune series, he was publishing really great, really nice novels, and it's a pity because right now he mostly remembered by the Dune, but some of those novels, like the Sandaroga Barrier or the Hellstorm's Hive, are really good novels, really thought-provocative, really good written, and in some way deserve at least as much attention as the Dune. But you know, yeah, the showbiz is pretty brutal thing, and whenever it gets its claws into something, it's really hard to find something beyond that he is like throwing into our faces. Well, if we're looking into this a little bit deeper, there are two ways how the big series are usually born. First of them was more common in the earlier times of the, well, I'm mostly talking about science fiction, a little bit of fantasy here, so in the earlier days of those two genres, the writer is creating a good novel which become pretty popular, it sells well, and the writer, and probably the publisher too, are starting to think maybe we should somehow exploit this success and create a sequel. and it will probably sell well because everybody already knows that that's a good product. Let's do it. Thus, the second part, the second book of the series is born. And sometimes it went on and on and on and on. The good example is the Xanth series by the Piers Anthony. I don't really know how long it is right now. I think it went over the 40 books. And I was really digging into that when I first read the first book. I think it was called A Spell for Chameleon. And the second one, and the third one, and the fourth one, and the fifth one, and then I started to get really tired because it wasn't really developing. It was like exploiting the same tropes, the same themes over and over and over and over again. And yeah, by the way, the Piers Anthony is known for exploiting the themes continuously. And of course, I'm not trying to gaslight the people who are much into the long series. That's absolutely their right, and sometimes it's really worth it, and maybe even it's not worth for me, it's worth for them. That's totally okay. I'm just trying to somehow argument the point that not every book should possibly be serialized. It's not like necessity. You can really write a different novel, you know, and it possibly, if the people like your first novel and they already know your name, they could possibly buy it and read it. And I think in some way the publishers are playing a big hand into that. They're like pushing the readers into the buying something that honestly require less marketing, because if it's a like part 7 of the bestseller series, you don't really need to do much more marketing, because people are already know that the previous books were more or less okay, so probably this one will be readable too, and they will buy it. And yeah, that's kind of how the capitalism works. The more the standardized the product, the easier it to sell. Does it really apply that much to the literature? I really doubt that. But of course, there is an audience, there is buyers for everything. And I have a really cool example of that. Do you know what is the most successful book series ever written in the history of the literature? And how many copies of books in those series were really sold? I bet that you will be astounded, staggered when I tell you the numbers. The real numbers of copies of books in that series that already been sold is over 2 billion. Not million, billion copies. Can you imagine that? This space opera franchise is published already for more than 60 years. And in total, there are already 3,000 titles in that series published. And you can also add almost 1,000 titles in the spin-off series. The funniest thing is that there is a good chance that you probably never heard of it. It's called Perry Rhodan. It's German franchise named after its main hero. And it's also not really like a top-notch science fiction. It's just a really like low-effort pulp space opera. But guys, 2 billion copies sold. So that tells us there is an audience for everything. But I guess the books of such quality right now probably experiencing some struggles because of the flood of the AI slope, though I guess the AI generated shit is even worse than anything that possibly most untalented, stupid wannabe writer could imagine. The AI is still worse, but the sheer amount of that will probably drown the bad quality books in it. But I guess that's also the topic for another video, and I'm not even sure that I wanted to talk much about the AI slope. I don't want to give it any publicity at all. So, returning back to my initial idea, why I don't get involved much with the long book series, and why I don't recommend people, at least I recommend to think twice before doing that. And it's not like something I just came up with, it's based on my reading experience. For example, I started the Expanse series by the James Corey and I get stuck on the third book. I started The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan and I got stuck on the fourth book. And there are a couple more of examples of that, because it's for me, and I guess I'm not this only person on the earth, I'm not the only reader on the earth who experienced the same thing. For me, it's kind of hard to this constant waiting for something to happen in the future. Like, we are not just finished with them right now, but in the next couple of books, definitely there will be a new solution for those characters' problems. And it's kind of like teasing and teasing and teasing and teasing, and then you're already at and you get tired. At least I get tired. I don't know how about you. Would be really interesting to hear your opinions. Please write into the comments, how do you feel? Those of you who are really digging the really long series, like, I don't know, something like those I have just mentioned, and there are plenty of really long series. How do you endure that? Because for me, it's from the reading is supposed to be pleasant, and at some point in the long series, the reading for me is becoming a hard work. And honestly, I have done a lot of hard work in my life, and I don't want more. I just have enough, and reading is my like safe place where I get pleasant emotions, maybe not positive, but at least some emotions, and it's not supposed to be the hard work. Of course, the book can be really hard to understand and complicated and maybe nerdy, like the books by Peter Watts, the really hard sci-fi stuff. But it's not supposed to be like labor. It's still I still getting some pleasure out of it, not just trying to fight through and yet another tome, yet another issue, so I can check on the next one and then fight through that, and so on and so on and so on. So yeah, I guess that's the thing. That's why I don't really, whenever I see the book that with this something like book one from the first trilogy from the so and so called series from this another big multiverse, I'm kinda get scared. How much of those I must be reading so I could fully understand the big picture, like how much of that I supposed to consume just to get in touch with that. I still think not everything should be serialized. The way the publishers and honestly sometimes us book influencers are pushing the readers, like, consume the series, check out for the new series, we're waiting for the next sequel for that one and for that one, is convenient for publishers, for book influencers to some extent, probably to some of the writers, but is it really convenient for the readers? For me, it's like if I'm going to getting my dinner each and every day in the certain fast food franchise, for example, I don't know, in McDonald's, for example. Like, I kind of like once in a while to eat a juicy Big Mac, but not, I don't think every day for a year, that would suck, honestly. And sometimes even the best dish, the most tasty one, if you will eat it every day for months and months, will turn into the gastronomic torture. And we also shouldn't forget that this constant urge to serialize the big novels are also killing, totally destroying such an awesome genre as a short story. And because it's really hard to serialize the short stories, it's possible, but it's kind of really tough to do, like to compete with such a big like 25 tomes big book series. I guess that sums up my pretty much spontaneous rant on this matter. I would be really happy to know your opinions on this, and please feel free to tell me whatever you want in the comment. Tell me how stupid am I about not liking the big series, because it's a core, it's essential, it's the best thing that science fiction and fantasy have ever invented. I will still disagree with you, but that means we have the diversity in opinions, and that's what is freedom about. So thank you, and read the good books. Bye.